Hi everybody, my name is Kristen and welcome back to CodeZena. Today, instead of talking about a tech challenge, I wanted to talk about the challenging tech market. I wanted to provide a little bit of context and also a little bit of my own backstory. Let's do it. Alright, so I actually made a slide deck to talk about some of the context in the tech market right now because I'm a very visual person and I like it. So hopefully this helps you too. Now, this is a figure I saw from layoffs at FYI. In the last 4 months, 184,601 employees have been laid off from tech jobs. So this is massive. For context, we're going to start with 2020 and then go through today, 2023. I think it's good to briefly mention that 2019, I graduated from my coding bootcamp. And tech was like, if you worked hard enough, you could pull yourself out of the working class or below the poverty line, wherever you were at, to the middle class. And that's the dream that I was sold. Then 2020 happened. And so we're going to talk about the pandemic and the recession. In 2020, I was about 6 months into my first tech job at a small startup. All of a sudden, we got work from home orders. I had never worked from home before and I didn't have a great setup for it. Obviously, we had to make things work because we weren't allowed to go into the office. It was quite the switch from being in person and I really missed my coworkers. I was more fortunate than most people, however, dealing with the death and unemployment of the pandemic. Unemployment skyrocketed to 13% and the CDC said that 350,000 people died of COVID. And we had a recession. We had a really deep, 2-month recession. However, at this time, tech was doing really good because tech could be completely remote. So all of these companies like Meta doubled the number of its employees in 2020. Zoom massively grew because they were seeing all of these new users. They needed new employees to help stabilize and to grow, probably overhired. Then we hit 2021 and we're still in a pandemic and now we're seeing inflation. The inflation happened to jump up from 1.4% up to about 7% because of the supply chain issues. So people still had money to spend, but there maybe weren't as many products to be sold. So we're still dealing with death and unemployment. The CDC says that even more people died, 415,000 people. However, we do get unemployment down to 4%, which is a much more normal level. So I actually experienced my first layoff from my first job. I had been with them for over a year, and after we went to working remote, it didn't really agree with my team, and they kind of fell apart. The parent company that owned my startup just decided we're gonna sell them off, and I was laid off. It took me about a month at that time to find a second role, which, like I said, the market was quite different at that point. Okay, so now we're hitting 2022, and there was the start of a war and the fall of cryptocurrencies. I was at my second job when the war in Russia and Ukraine started. This was massively devastating for the US market because Russia held about 14% of the world's oil, and all of a sudden we can't do business with them anymore. They're invading a sovereign nation. For me personally, my second job was also a startup, and they were trying to do their Series B funding when we saw kind of a market collapse. They decided to do something else, which was to try to sell their company, which they did to a much larger company, Zoom. We also saw the fall of crypto. Crypto and Bitcoin and blockchain and all of those things had been buzzwords in tech for years, and people thought that it's not going to affect us, but that didn't last. And crypto saw a huge falling out, lost billions of dollars. It really hit the tech community hard. Not to mention, 270,000 people still died from COVID-19. And the inflation had not really gotten much better. It only went down to 6.5% from the 7% that it had been previously. And so in order to combat this, The Fed raises their interest rates, which means now it is more expensive to borrow money from them. And that's for everyone, including tech companies. So now we hit 2023. Interest rates are still high. We have these massive tech layoffs and the crash of Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank was the banker to about 50% of all venture capital funded technology. Startups are getting hit hard, and large companies are seeing the inflation, the rise in the federal interest rate, and they're panicking too. We see these massive tech layoffs. It's been really hard and really prevalent this year. For me, that was my second layoff. I had been working for Zoom for about less than a year, and they decided to lay off 15% of all of their employees. So many companies have done these mass layoffs, and so many big companies, Google, Facebook, which I guess is Meta, Netflix, everyone cutting their workforces by 15, 20%, that's why we see that big number of 187 and some change thousand people getting laid off. So I don't see these problems slowing down anytime soon. We still are seeing deaths from COVID-19. 1.1 million Americans as of March 2023 have died of COVID-19. And I think it's hard to understate that impact that has on the country and how we operate and the market. This is still huge. I think the takeaway here is that we sort of lived in this tech bubble for a few years where we thought that the tech market was impervious from the changes that were happening, but we weren't impervious. I think we were just delayed. So if you are struggling to find a job right now or worried about layoffs, please keep in mind that this is not your fault. This is the problem of the whole tech community right now. Okay, everybody, that was my presentation on the tech market right now. I hope it was insightful for you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Please hit that like button and please subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye. Biggest cars drive by.